Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. My name is Zach Golden, and happy to be here with y'all today. Got an awesome flyover to cover. I said I wasn't going to mention this, but this is actually a picture from last week. I needed a full screen shot of Starbase, but I didn't really have one from this week, so I went with an old one just for us to start the show off. But got some great guests with us today. We have Ryan Hansen Space joining us.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, as Zach said, it was a great flyover. We've got a lot of cool images, some progress at some of the exciting sites, so we have a lot to cover today.
Awesome. Yeah, we also have Lawrence with us today.
Glad to be here with you and Ryan and Joe, and another great week of overhead images.
Agreed. And finally, we have Astro Joe back with us this week, who will be doing questions and donations. So welcome back, Astro Joe.
Thank you very much, Zach. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Starbase friends around the world. Let's dive right in and enjoy the show.
Hey, did you have like a flooded basement last week or something?
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. We had like, what was it, 9 inches of rain in 6 days?
8 in 6 days.
8 inches of rain in 6 days. Yeah, we're good now.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've recovered from that. I know a lot of places around the country have been getting a lot of pretty crazy rain. I think even Ryan is coming through Iowa this week. I know it was like Nebraska and some other states were getting some super heavy rain.
Yeah, Mother Nature has not been nice to several areas around the world this year.
Is there a storm heading for Texas right now?
Yeah, something about the long-range forecast, Hurricane Beryl or something like that.
Yeah, I got some alerts on my phone saying it already went from like a Category 1 all the way up to a 3 so far. So hopefully it doesn't make landfall anywhere near Starbase. We'll have to keep our eyes on that this week. But in the meantime, SpaceX probably going to keep chugging away. That's actually one thing that we've been talking about for years now. That was like what would happen in the event of a hurricane here, because I think most of the site isn't necessarily like pre-prepared for a hurricane. There are some walls around the launch site, but I don't think anything that will actually like stop a storm surge. So I've always been hoping that like the launch site 2.0 would end up having like an actual storm surge fence around the entire thing. But that hasn't happened yet. So hopefully we won't have to see what the outcome of a large storm surge event would be down here. But again, moving on, we got a lot to cover this week. One thing we are definitely going to talk about is the chopstick test using test article 14.1. So we're probably going to hold that off to the end of the show since that's kind of launch site related. But I know a lot of people are probably having a lot of questions about this, so we'll go ahead and touch on that at the end of the show. But in the meantime, we will go ahead and start off where we normally do, which is over at the Massie site. And I got to be honest with y'all, there's not a ton to talk about here. And that also is the case for a few other places on site. So we're not going to just like waste time on those places if there is actually nothing to talk about. So there is a chance this show may actually go a little bit shorter than what we normally do, but still will be tons of great information. So cool. Well, Ryan or Lawrence, what do we got going on at Massey's this week?
Well, it seems every week that they add more and more concrete to the site. It seems that the upper right-hand corner is getting the concrete fixed this week, and as they continue to get rid of as much dirt as they can, it seems like they maybe want to keep the dust to a minimum. So a lot of areas are receiving concrete, and they are extending pretty much as far as they can, ending up with some interesting shapes there along the right-hand side. Little odd, but it does appear that they're going to be bringing a road down here on the lower right as they're clearing away some of the dirt that they had originally piled up there. It's kind of hard to tell from a lot of the aerial photos, but the concrete pad there to the left of the digger is a little higher than over to the right of it. So there was a little bit of a sloped area with some dirt there to kind of make that grade kind of blend. And we'll have to see what they do there. May do concrete ramp like they had around pad A or the suborbital pad A, or they may do some sort of a wall. We'll have to wait and see, but it does look like they want to have a road around that side, so we should expect that concrete to kind of continue down along that right-hand side.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, previously they filled in this area over here. We talked about that on a few weeks ago. So really not much happening down in this area, although I do see some new items piled up down here. Don't really know what that is, but
I believe it's speculated that could actually be cladding for the interior walls of the static fire test stand. We don't actually know for sure, but they do kind of look like larger rectangular plates that they may be able to fix to the walls, potentially just to keep the concrete from being exposed to high heating.
That would be interesting. So that would go. Do you think that would go along the entire inner wall, or just like inside of where the actual trench itself is?
Probably just where the bucket is itself. Majority of that heat should be dissipated about midway through the trench. So if they do end up doing that, it should probably just be kind of on the left half.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I imagine it'll be difficult to know whether or not that's been done unless you happen to see a. Actually, I guess we lately have been getting lucky with some clear images inside of this. So maybe we'll actually end up being able to see that. But yeah, looking at it again, that does make sense. There are several stacks of those panels, so probably safe to assume that that's where they would be going. Do you think they could do cladding on the outside of the actual QD structure as well, too? Probably not.
I don't think they'd want to box any of that in just in case there are leaks. It's going to dissipate if you're in open air a lot better. We know they have a lot of little nozzles around there for either fire suppression or detonation suppression. So I don't think they'd really want to enclose that if they can help it.
Yeah, I guess with the vehicle basically firing straight down in this trench, they may not have to worry about flames coming up here as much.
Yeah, the only flame should really be just on shutdown the residual gases as they billow up around the ship, which we have seen video of, which is pretty neat. Then again, it's fairly low energy. It probably won't do much. And if they spray, whether it be nitrogen or anything around there, it should probably be enough.
Yeah, that'll be interesting actually fitting those steel plates down here. I guess you would have to like drill through the actual wall in order to put like fasteners or something on there because there's no um, embeds on this wall for them to like actually weld those panels to.
Yeah, they'd probably use some sort of a concrete anchor, maybe weld some strips to it. I believe that's what they did on the base of Orbital Launch Tower A. They welded some strips to those, and then the metal panels to that.
Yeah, I guess they probably have a way to go trying to get this done. I wonder if that's like something that they discovered after the if it was always in the plan or if they discovered that after that first static fire, like, oh wow, we don't really like what's happening on the walls down here. Um, I actually was wondering about that when I first saw those images because I remember there was um, it almost looked like one of them was cracked and like water was coming through it. And maybe I can bring that up really quick. Um, if I could find it.
Yeah, I think we aren't quite sure if that was just the texture of the wall based on how they installed the walls in the ground because there's not really forms making the walls. They kind of dig and then fill the concrete into the hole. So it's possible that there was some waviness in the actual hole, which contributed to the texture on the wall. So you can see throughout the entire wall, it has a texture to it. And yeah, it's kind of unclear. It's possible that could be due to damage, or maybe it got worse during the static fire. But yeah, they may be putting some panels on there to protect that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it from the side right here, I think this is definitely something you don't want to happen. Um, I mean, and this could be thermal damage right here, or it could actually be possibly from the actual original concrete job itself that there was this little tiny void in here. Um, but I mean, even if you look down on this end of the wall, it looks kind of rough. So I would imagine it may be a good idea to put those steel plates everywhere just to protect it. And I'm thinking of was it Pad 39B where the inner walls got blown out during, I want to say STS 124? Could be wrong about the specific flight, but I remember it blew out the actual walls. It was a little different though because they had um, are they called flame bricks or something like that that they had along the um, uh, on the wall, and basically those got blown out. I used to know the exact name of those, but I could be wrong. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the chat um, if they remember the actual name of those. But yeah, I don't think you would want that kind of damage occurring to this. So probably a good idea to just add that steel in here. And this is, I guess, a lesson that you probably should already be aware of. Like when you just look at the actual launch mount base, so you know that you're going to have lots of spalling damage anywhere that it's next to those intense flames. So yeah, I imagine they'll probably want to get all of that installed before they even perform another test on this.
Which
Yeah, I would imagine.
yeah, go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would imagine so, especially with the way they've been working on this. It seems more like they brought 26 out, did the static fire, made sure all the systems were working, and now they're going back and fixing everything that they found out.
Yeah, which we should have some time because 31 may be headed here to do Cryo Part 2, and then after that, we'll likely see it head to the static fire stand. Not sure, does it need to go back to the production site between the Cryo and the static fire? I can't remember. Does it have engines on it, or is it just 30 that has engines right now?
I don't think 31 has engines.
Okay, because they're using the thrust stand, so it shouldn't have engines at that point. So yeah, it's likely that it'll go back to the production side, and they should have some time. So we'll have to see if they move on to that project between the 31's cryo and static fire.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, we think 30 might come back here because I believe they did have an RVAC replaced, but we don't know if that'll just be a spin prime or a full static for that engine.
That is a good point. Hadn't thought about that.
One thing I would like to see with 30, once they have the new tiles installed, would be to actually perform another static fire test after that, just to make sure that everything is, fastened as well as it can be. I'm sure they'll probably do similar tests with the suction devices that they had to actually make sure that none of those tiles fall off. But the actual fastening method is the same, but the material underneath it could potentially change some dynamic with the way those tiles attach. So it would be interesting if they actually end up performing another static fire test just to verify that that initial pressure wave isn't going to cause those tiles to fall off.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting to make sure, especially with the new stand set up.
Yeah, and speaking of new stuff, we're still waiting on the tanks for the liquid oxygen storage to arrive. So 3 tanks that we're waiting on, and have not seen those yet. There were a few tanks that arrived sometime this week. I was thinking of the day. I think it was probably Tuesday that they arrived. And initially there was some thought that they might come to this location, but now that we've seen them from the air, it's seems a little bit more clear that they're not going here because they're not quite as large as the tanks that are this tank right here, which seems like they'll be identical to this. So don't think they'll be coming here, but we'll maybe do some speculation on where those will end up going once we reach Sanchez or probably even the launch site. So yeah, other than that, there isn't a ton of new stuff happening here. They're still working on this test stand right here, and I think most of the work that they've been doing is kind of on the auxiliary stuff. So the actual, okay, let me go the other direction. So basically, this area right here where all of the mechanical pipe work comes, they seem to be moving slow again. We did see them stack 2 levels pretty quickly, and then they still have the what is that, 4th level that is waiting. But I don't know. It seems to me that things have kind of slowed down on this a little bit.
A little bit. They did install pipes up the one leg there from that GSE stand.
Yeah, you can see them
Oh, is it
poking out
right
there at
here?
the top. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
that's
No,
interesting.
the verticals indicate that there is going to be at least another level because they have the lead-ins on the vertical columns and the little adapter for another level. So it looks like it's going to be getting at least a 5th level. Seems like every week we add another level to this. So not sure when it's going to stop.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think we've, speculated before on a some sort of potential ship forward section, the actual extended nose cone, possibly, because the way that these pipes are going up here, it's very high in comparison to where the QDs are on both the booster and ship. So that's really weird. It almost makes me think it's going to header tanks or something like that.
The pipes could be for, just electrical for, if they have sensors up there and they want to run them down a common pipe, they might be able to have a data bus there in those pipes. But those do look quite big for just being electrical. So I wonder if there's an element of maybe hydraulics in there as well. We'll have to kind of see what they do with those pipes.
Yeah, super, super slow progress with this, though. One other thing I noticed earlier is that they got rid of the little office building that they had down here. I don't know if this was just temporary until they finished this structure, but it is now gone. And speaking of this structure over here, it looks like they're preparing to extend that as well. So adding in the foundation right here with the vapor barrier, and then it looks like they're preparing to actually pour some concrete over there soon. And I initially thought maybe this could just be, additional parking space, but that vapor barrier kind of makes it clear that it's for the actual to extend the building. So I think we'll probably see some additional construction out here soon.
Yeah, and you can see a door there too, so it may also be a loading ramp.
Right, like an external, maybe with like a canopy or something over it.
Yeah.
Still have no idea what this structure's for though. So, oops, sorry, kind of zoomed back in there on accident. Anything else y'all want to touch on at Massie's? As I said, it's slightly boring this week over here, but maybe I missed something.
We can maybe talk about the covered base structure for the thrust puck there to the right. They did. It looks like they've put something in the middle of it. It's still kind of unclear if they're just kind of vertical supports to hold up the tarp while they're in there doing work. We're still not quite sure what they're doing in there. Covering it kind of implies maybe some type of welding, but it seems like they're trying to do something in there. But yeah, not gonna, I guess, read into the pentagon shape too much quite yet. We'll have to wait until the tarp is removed to see, if they actually added something or if those are just kind of a standoff to create a volume inside for them to work.
Yeah, it's weird because usually you would like actually have a tent over this instead of making it kind of like an enclosed space like that, especially if you're in there welding. That would kind of suck. It'd get really hot in there quick. Kind of
Agreed.
seems like
Yeah.
they're covering it.
Yeah, we also saw bidding yesterday, so it looks like they're getting ready to start some more testing real soon.
Testing with what?
Looked like I believe it was the nitrogen venting. It was a lot, like not just a normal offload of the tankers. It was really noticeable.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe they were doing some more testing over near the actual. Was it in this area?
Yeah, it looked like it was where the nitrogen fans are.
Okay. Yeah, well, we don't have any vehicles out here right now, but usually you can kind of get signs of when they will be doing testing here because they will start to like fill the actual tanks, and sometimes we'll see like venting from super far away, just kind of letting you know that they're actually refilling these tanks. But I think there's still some actual facilities tests going on down here, especially with the static fire test stand, and I don't think it's actually fully completed yet, considering that they haven't connected to this last tank. I would say this is like still in testing mode right now. I think once it's actually finished, this little U-shaped piece right here won't be there anymore. So I'm pretty sure they're still doing some testing as far as the actual functionality of this system goes. But moving on, Astro Joe, do we have any questions for Massey's? I can't imagine we do.
I got one question, but I'd like to address some support first. Thank you for all of your donations and gifts. Space Girl X with 21 South African Rand. James L, $2 super chat. Love you guys. Thanks for all you do. Flipper79, Flip Diaz, gifted 2 memberships before the stream started. Same with Calicia Lee with 5. Miss Jax with 1. Jake Winlow with 5. And DS with 500 yen. Cheers from one of the biggest Astro Joe fan in Japan. I didn't know I had any fans anywhere, let alone in Japan. Well, that's great. Thanks. Anthony Frank Gomez from Rocket Ranch, $50 super chat. No questions here. Just love you all from Rocket Ranch. Beachside barbecue and fireworks at Starbase July 4th. You're all invited. Thank you very much, Anthony. We appreciate that. Question from Crane Man. What are those black pipes for above the steel plates? Not really sure what the context is on that.
I believe up
yeah.
at the top.
Isn't this just the mesh that they use for? Actually, I'm not sure. Are those actual pipes, or is that a roll of? No idea.
Yeah, they kind of look like rolls of like a fabric almost. Like normally the pipes, you either have like your black pipe or you've got the pre-insulated stainless steel pipes, and I don't see the ends poking out, so it's probably not anything related to like a insulated pipe.
Yeah, not sure on that one.
Yeah,
Cool.
same here. All right. Question from Michael Bertoldi. Do you think they'll build another static or test stand / flame trench to increase cadence?
We have talked about that on previous weeks. We mentioned it last week. They do have this huge area to the right here where potentially another one could go. I think that would be kind of far down the road just because they haven't really reached that kind of cadence yet. They still only have one cryo test stand for the ships here. So I can't imagine that they'll be cranking out cryo tests and installing engines that quickly where they would actually need two separate flame trenches. But yeah, I think that's probably maybe a year or two down the road if it ever happens.
I think a good indication of that would be if we see them building another stand for either the cryo or the static fire stand. That way they can kind of use them in parallel. If they get to that point, then there's a little bit of a throughput problem. But if we don't see them building two stands, so they can kind of flip flop which ship is static firing, then we're probably not there to the point where the farm and the stand itself or the actual static fire trench is the limiting factor.
Yeah, that is a really good point because you don't necessarily need a second flame trench to test two vehicles. Well, obviously, if you wanted to test them simultaneously, you would. But if you already had a ship that was waiting to perform a static fire and then another one that had already received its engines and you wanted to have that ready to perform its test like within days of this, you could potentially send the second stand back to the build site and have the ship waiting on it while the first one is performing its tests. So that's a really good point that I didn't really think of, that you could just have multiple test stands for this actual this pad.
Agreed. And I would just add that I think most of the where we're going to get the duplicate flame trenches test stands would be in Florida versus here, where cadence is expected to be much higher.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. Cool. Well, if we don't have any more questions on this site, I will go ahead and move us over to the Sanchez site. So I'm sure a lot of you know by now that the tower sections that we were waiting on have finally arrived. I actually have some good images from Starship Gazer. I'm going to exit out of this here really quick. So Starship Gazer caught these as they were coming into the port. I think they've already arrived by now. This is actually a really cool shot. You can see pretty much all of the internals of this section. I think this is section 4.
That's 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So got cryotubes coming up on 2 different sides right here. And this is slightly different from what's in the tower right now as far as, the pad A tower, just with the layout, but it's a little difficult to tell from this angle. So hopefully once it arrives to site, we'll be able to kind of get a better idea of what all has changed with that, because you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of the way that they're adjusting the design of their systems even before it's actually fully installed. So that'll be cool to see once we get better images of it next week. Um, but yeah, the carriage and chopstick arms are both on here as well, and believe these are already at the port. Not sure if they've been offloaded yet, but as far as the tower sections go, I think we probably won't see those actually make their way to Sanchez until the first two tower sections are stacked. And the reason for that is just to do with the fact that there are no more um, pedestals, or not pedestals, but um, prepared like lots for these. So they have like embeds in the ground where these sit on top of. I'm not 100% sure on that though, because to me, I'm kind of curious why those are necessary in the first place. It makes sense when you're actually trying to do the initial assembly work, because you want to make sure that these are um, attached to the ground and not going to move around as you're lifting in the cross beams and whatnot. But once it's already fully assembled, I mean, the wind's not going to blow it over. So I imagine you could really just set them down on the ground here. But, um, these all these ones over here all showed up fully assembled, and they still sat them on top of prepared bases. So not sure whether or not that is actually truly needed, or if it's just something that they did. But I'm thinking that we probably won't see those other two sections actually be transported over here until the first two are completed. And this is section one right here. And they've, as you guys can kind of see here, maybe I'll get a better angle of this. They've begun to install cryopipes on the inside of this as well too. So they did have it on that fifth section. They performed that work while it was still at the Roberts Road facility, but they've just started to do that on the first section here. They kind of have started, putting together those different pieces down here, and they've only just now started actually installing them into section one. And as y'all can see, they also do have some scaffolding up here now as well. So that's looking like we're one step closer to seeing this move to the launch site. I don't know. I would say, depending on the order of operations that they do, it may be like within the next 2 weeks that we actually see that move, but they're definitely getting close.
Yeah, we know that according to the FAA documents for the big crane, they're planning on having the first 6 segments lifted before July 27th. So they should start moving on these real quick.
Yeah, there's other indications that at the launch site, which we'll get to, that they plan to roll these sections sooner rather than later. So I imagine by the next flyover, we may have either a section stacked or at least at the launch site.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. We'll talk about that more when we get to the launch site. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but there was one thing that I briefly mentioned while we were at the Massie's part of the site. And this right here are the 2 tanks that I mentioned that arrived this week. And when we initially saw these from the ground, they looked much larger than they actually are. They are very large as far as like width goes, or diameter, but they're very short. So initially we thought these, when they showed up, that it may be the tanks that we're waiting on for the Massie site, but they're probably about half the length of what we would expect them to be for that location. But as far as we know, I think these are LNG tanks, correct? Or labeled as LNG tanks?
Yeah, they were, and these have been sitting at the port for a long time, and apparently it was the logo that was on them originally was from the shipping company.
Oh, right. Yeah, these were okay. These have been there for what, like 6 months or something like that, if not longer.
Yeah, they've been there a while.
They do look like brand new tanks, though. So maybe that LNG sign on them is actually accurate, because they may be specifically constructed for that purpose. I mean, any and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure any cryo tank could be converted to hold whether it's nitrogen, liquid oxygen, or methane. Some of them, the methane ones specifically, may have some different plumbing on the front of them as far as needing to do certain operations with, chilling the actual, rechilling the boil off gases. So, yeah, I think it's maybe reliable that these are for LNG related applications, which means that it probably is going to the launch site, but not 100% sure where. I think maybe I'll just skip around to that really quickly because there are a few options. So, for one, they are now clearing up all the space inside of the original tank farm area. So, we may see them actually clear out some of this and then build some foundations for those tanks. They are kind of small to be actual storage tanks, but one thing that they remind me of are these two tanks right here. So these are actually intended to be part of the detanking system. So they basically hold liquid gas mixtures of methane prior to being recondensed inside of these tanks right here. So this is like a pre-storage tank for these right here. So one thing that I've kind of been thinking about, and I think I've mentioned on past episodes, was that this system right here in particular, while you could easily share the remaining everything else in this tank farm, I think that when you're detanking, you may not want to have it go all the way over to this part of the tank farm just to detank. So I think they may duplicate this part of the system, and that includes this as well too, this heat exchanger. So I think these heat exchangers, the boil off storage tanks, and the actual recondenser would probably all go need to be duplicated for the other tank farm. But I'm going to go ahead and return back to this, unless you guys had something you wanted to add to that.
I was going to say we can wait until we get back to the launch site.
Yeah, I'll mention it again for sure. So what else do we got over here at the Sanchez site? There's a few interesting things on the ground. One of the things that we've also kind of been waiting on, and this almost requires us to jump around again, would be the replacement for the linear actuator for the left chopstick arm, or it could be the right chopstick arm, depending on how you're looking at it. But I was looking at these kind of closely, so they do have two sitting here, and I don't think that these have been upgraded. Both of these look kind of identical, and I'm basically only able to really tell that just based on these pipes that are on the side right here. So I don't think either of these are the upgraded design. A little bit tough to tell from this angle, but I think maybe if they were preparing to swap out the other actuator, that we may see that arrive beforehand. But it's also possible that they just won't do that and only have that upgraded actuator on the left arm.
Yeah,
it was strange.
Go ahead, Lars.
It was strange last night. Something got moved to the launch site on an SPMT. If you go down to near where the those tower feet are sitting, there's a blue tarped box.
Where are those? You're talking about these?
Yeah, so if you go up from there, that thing right there. We believe that
moved to the launch site.
Yeah, whatever was under that. I tried looking at it, and I posted a horrible pic in Patreon, but from what I can tell, it looked almost like an actuator from the side.
It almost looks a little bit long.
I was going to say it does look exceptionally long for that to be, unless of course the piston is extended in the box. But I can't imagine they would ship it in that manner.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that's just from what I can tell on the slide. It was dark and rainy. So,
So my theory with those actuators is that, they've got 2 on the tower now, and they've got 2 sitting right there. However you want to do it, you technically have enough to swap in and out and upgrade. It's possible they upgrade one or both of these now, and then they remove the one from the tower. They swap one of these on, and then they use the one that's currently on the tower for the next tower. They kind of swap them in and out in that manner. We don't necessarily have to wait for that other one to come off and get upgraded. And
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
agreed.
because when you're going to need, like, as you're saying, you need these for this tower. And the other thing is that with the shorter chopsticks, you may not need the same upgrades that they made for the first tower with the shorter arms. So there's a chance that these are already, perfect for the new tower, but they wouldn't necessarily work on the existing tower. Cool. So what else do we have going on at the Sanchez site? They're still building some additional. This is not a good shot to show it. Some additional structures for the Star Factory. So they have a lot of material down here, which this is where they've pretty much been building everything that ends up inside of the Star Factory. So we have 2 walkways that have been set up here, and I don't think these initially I thought these looked similar to the ones that are used on the ship engine install stands, but I don't think that's what these are. So these are probably meant to work around another assembly stand, which maybe they're going to be connected with these right here.
I was under the impression those were for Mega Bay 2 for one of the other engine work platforms. They look similar based on what I've seen, but yeah, there might be some smaller differences that we might have to hash out later.
Yeah, I was thinking that the ones that were for the engine install stand were constructed in several pieces on the ground, but they were like full discs, um, and they didn't have their own um, stands like this, the legs. And it's interesting that there's only 2 of them. To me, that's another indication that this is for something else.
Well, the engine install platforms for the ships, there's basically a platform that the engines sit on, and then there's these separate pieces that bolt to the top of it. So you can see where the curved corners or the RVACs would be. They've got 3 of those that are kind of positioned so that you can slide an RVAC in from each side 120 degrees apart. And then they have basically flip up walkway platforms between kind of the middle ring that you would have if they were kind of all together. So that allows them to push the engines into the center area as well.
Right.
So I think these are for the ship install stands.
Okay. Yeah, if not, maybe we'll actually get to see them attach them to something else. But aren't all 3 ship install stands um, assembled right now inside of the Mega Bay?
I don't believe all 3 of them are, no. I think the frame is, but I don't think they have like the floors quite yet.
Okay. We'll check those out here in a bit too, because we got a good shot inside of the Mega Bay. So we'll see if we can see whether or not those are actually installed. Anything else at the Sanchez site? I know there's a ton of stuff laying around, but I haven't really seen anything actually new down in this area other than more concrete work.
No, I mean, really, the only thing that we caught was the SPMTs right there under the cryo stand, ship cryo stand.
Are there any ships that are ready for cryo testing right now?
S-31 would be the only one to go back right now.
Right, if they finish their replacing the raceway and electronics.
Yeah.
Has this
Zach.
moved? Yeah.
We can finish this discussion here quick.
Oh, I was going to say, do we know if this has moved at all since they did this?
I believe it did move. I think people were saying that it moved actually further away from the road, like they maybe put something kind of closer to like ship 26 on this side of the road. Not entirely sure on that though.
Yeah, we
Cool.
know the 2-point lifter went into high bay.
Right. Yeah, I actually do remember seeing that. And I also remember, on that note, something that I missed over here. Maybe this was what you were going to mention, Ryan.
Yep, probably. So, yeah, so these structures showed up, and at first we kind of thought they might have been kind of the landing rails they have on the chopsticks because they have those circular cutouts. But you can see they're curved, so that really wouldn't work out very well. Um, but it seems like these might actually be part of another um, ship lifting system potentially, given some of the connection points they've got on these with there's actually another angle that shows another piece of hardware as well, that which could be, also involved with the setup. But it's uh, it's interesting, where they are. They're definitely beefed up compared to the other ones that we've seen. So I'd have to see what they do with these here in the coming weeks.
Are you talking about this right here?
Yeah, that seems like it has a lifting point in the middle, and then there's like two like pivot points at each end of it, almost like these longer, circular cutout parts could hang from that. Um, so little interesting.
Right. And so because of the extended the extended nose cone area, sorry, is the nose cone actually extended, or is it just the tanks that are extended on V3?
Should be just the tanks.
Hmm. So then why would they need a different lifting mechanism or a longer one for V3?
Well, it really comes down to wherever the um, grabbing points are at. If they move where the chopsticks would touch the ship, or where the lifting jigs would grab onto the ball in the socket, if they change that location, that would dictate where these, or how long or how high these pieces need to be.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
I
makes
think.
sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think this ties into the discussion I think we're gonna have at the launch site when we get there about the ship heights and everything.
Yeah, this would make sense. So, I mean, this basically limits. I'm thinking that the load points would at least have to be on the actual nose cone section and not below it, um, in order for this to really work, or else they'll end up having to use like the squid lifting mechanism that they used for the nose cone again. But if they want to continue to actually stack the nose cones or stack the vehicles using these, then it kind of limits the position of where those lifting points are going to be. I guess one thing also to consider is that with the version 3 of the ship, we may probably expect to see different load points, right? If they're going to at some point eventually move on to trying to catch the ship, then the current lifting mechanism is not necessarily going to work. So this could be something that would interface with whether it's retractable pins or something like that that actually fold out so that they can interface with the landing rails on the chopsticks. This could maybe have to interface with something like that as well too.
Agreed.
Cool. So anything else at the Sanchez site that y'all want to touch on?
Yeah, they've just been tidying up and getting things ready for the tower stacking from and pad B construction, from what I can see.
Astro Joe, did we have any questions on the Sanchez site?
Got a few questions. I want to thank Ninja Decimator. Pew, pew, pew. Thanks for all the amazing photos with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Yazada, $20 super chat. I saw that photo of Irma peering down through the clouds with a camera. Looked cold and difficult getting these great photos. Reminded me of all the hard work that RGV crew puts into this. Thanks very much for that, Yazada. Appreciate it. Bruce Rigsby with the 1999 super chat. Look at the bottom of the tower segments at Sanchez. SpaceX is attaching those shorter sections to each. I think we already addressed that, maybe.
Not sure what they're referring to. They may just be the actual pedestals that they're sitting on top of, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. All right. 489. Whoops. It's scrolling on me as questions come in. It just jumps right to the bottom. 49.99 pound super chat. No question, just some fuel money for the flyovers. Love you guys, and thank you so much. Thank you, Smooth Juice. Appreciate that. It goes right back into keeping RGV team flying. Jeez, can't talk today. I've got a question, two questions, basically the same from Tom 8 and Ulrich Mueller. In the interview from Everyday Astronaut with Elon Musk, additional tower sections are mentioned. What's your take on this?
Well, I did post a article about this on X, and I kind of shared most of my opinion on that, and I don't think it's really changed. You know, I did mention that there was one sign potentially of additional tower sections, and this was actually something that Ryan pointed out last week, which was the those additional pedestals that are down there on the bottom. I don't know why it's not letting me scroll to that image. Stand by.
It was later pointed out that those pedestals have actually been there for a bit, that they originally tried to build the Section 8 and 9 on those, but they were having issues potentially getting stuff lined up, or something seems to be wrong with them, so they have set them aside. So those have been there for a little while, so I don't think that's a good indicator that another section is going to be built. Plus, I think there's some other mathematical reasonings to suggest that they're not actually going to be adding another section or two, despite what Elon has said.
Also, we know that each of the sections have been labeled now. So sections 1 through 9 have all been labeled.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and it is a decent indicator. And for some reason, I'm like losing my ability to zoom in here. I'm not sure what that's about. But yeah, so all of the pedestals have been labeled, and I guess that is somewhat of a decent indicator. But if I remember correctly, and maybe this is wrong, but the last two sections on Tower A, I believe, were labeled 8A and 8B, right? Or was
That's
that
correct, but yeah, that was correct. But with the new, with the last two towers, they actually made segment 7 shorter on each tower, and have made the top section more of a section on its own versus just a cap.
Yeah, that's where I think like the A and the B come from. Is that the top section was kind of originally designed, and it was assembled in two pieces separately, but it was still kind of one section, versus the major design change they've made between these towers since the first one is that the top cap is more of its own section now.
Yeah, I guess where I was going with that is, um, if you had an additional section in here, it may end up not being like a full three level section, and it isn't too hard to imagine that you could have like a 6A or 6B. So, in my opinion, I don't think. Well, first of all, I don't believe that the tower will be taller. I think there's too much evidence that shows that it won't be. However, I don't think that this naming scheme is enough to make that a definite.
Understand.
Yeah, works for me. Crayman wanted to address the black counterweights coming in from that storage. They look brand new. Are more black counterweights for the SPMTs transporting tower sections?
I'm assuming, talking about these counterweights over here, these are more than likely going to be installed on here. So they need counterweights on the backside as well as the front side like they already have. Once they're fully underneath this thing, I'm guessing, I don't think they can really move further underneath it in its current position. So you'd have to move it further out and then back underneath it before you can put these counterweights here. So I don't think that, I don't know if there's any additional laying around here that I missed, but that is what I can assume he's talking about.
Yeah, we saw a whole bunch of them that were stored at the storage lot off Highway 4, and it looks like most of those got transferred to the launch site for the new crane.
Looks like there are still some down here. These are also counterweights down here as well too. So yeah, I mean, theoretically, they could probably be used for tower sections. Cool. Any other Sanchez questions?
I want to address some more support. 55 Chevy Guy Steve gifting 5 memberships, and Tim Jones gifting 5 memberships. Thank you both, and welcome all new members. Rocket Profit with a $10 super chat. 10 train for support. Rolling, hop on, everybody. Bruce Rigsby, $1.99 super chat says they are attaching those pedestals permanently to the bottom of the tower sections, I believe.
No. So these sections are bolted. So they're just bolted onto the tower sections. And once they move them to the launch site, they'll just unbolt them. I am curious. I think all the cross beams may need to be re-added, but I'm not sure if they were ever there. Now that I think about it, but no, these are not permanently being added. The only way to actually see that, or the only way to say that they were, is if you could see them from the side and actually be able to tell whether or not these are like welded in place. But yeah, it wouldn't really make sense to attach them permanently because they would not be able to interface with the top part of these tower sections. So
Yeah, the diagonals would not line up, depending on, because those are not tall enough, I don't think, to offset like one truss width apart. So your diagonals wouldn't actually line up with anything. So plus there's no attachment points on those pieces to add additional diagonals. So yeah, that's not happening.
Yep. All right. Ninja Decimator, pew, 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 $9.99 super chat for saying choo choo. He's on the train. And thanks, Six String Simpleton, for just joining at the flight supporter level. That's great. Question from Liam Donald. Are the big water tanks for fire suppression hooked up to the mega bays yet?
Yeah, actually. So, well, let me take that back. So they did some work in the last few weeks, and let me see if I can get an angle that will actually show this better. This isn't the greatest for showing it. Maybe right here. So in the previous weeks, they had all of this concrete dug out, and then they were drilling underground with some like horizontal drilling over to this area right here. And I don't think they were. So this would be the water storage that he's mentioning. I don't think they were connecting to this, although they could have been. I thought they were connecting to this system right here, which is two separate things. So I think this is potentially, we've mentioned like fire suppression system for the mega bays. This also potentially could be for the entire Star Factory as well too. But it's tough to say whether or not they were connecting to this system or this system, which we also haven't seen labels of these tanks yet because there's no longer access down this road. So nobody's been able to like come down here and like grab any images that would really identify what this is. However, I do think there's a chance this is argon storage. So previously, they have had argon storage, or sorry, mobile argon tanks outside of these bays, and that's what they were using for welding, like when they were on their turntables. And there's also, oh, now that I think about this, pressurization trailers, which are normally outside of this building. And there's, I don't know if this may be an argon trailer. I can't tell if this is an argon trailer. But the actual mobile pressurization trailers used to be outside of this building, and they would have hoses running to the inside of the building. So this could be similar to what's actually over here, which is basically just used for pressurizing the ships and boosters. I think that is a similar situation down here, that these are used for vaporizing nitrogen in that case, to send it over to this building so that they can just have, I guess, like ports on the inside of the building somewhere where they can just connect the hoses that run up to the for pressurizing the actual boosters in this case. And I don't see anything going to this building, but basically the manifold that they installed is right here, and it's a little difficult to see this week. I did have better images of it in previous weeks. But yeah, pretty sure that's what's going on here, is all of these different pipe manifolds that are running into the side of the building over here. So, and that could be for something else as well too, because you do have the Raptor storage bay right here. So part of this building, I'm pretty positive, is being able to test the engines. So like pressure testing engines once they're delivered. I'm pretty sure you probably need either nitrogen or argon, something like that, for that test as well too. But yeah, it's tough to say for sure what this is for, but I'm pretty sure this is the only thing that's physically connected to this right now.
Yeah, could it also possibly be helium, which is, I believe, what they still use to spin start the engines?
Man. There's been a debate on that. There was actually an article released recently, which said that they are no longer using helium to spin start engines and instead are using nitrogen, which is a little bit confusing because, as far as my understanding went, looking at the panels on the outside of the launch mount, it definitely looked like they're still using helium. So tough to say on that one, but I don't think that you would. I mean, I guess I don't know why you would need to have on-site like intermediate storage for helium just to like bring it here and then send it to the launch site later. So I think, I mean, I would love to get see some labels on the front of these, because I'm pretty sure each of these tanks down here are labeled, and you could have very well 4 different gases here. So tough to say.
Agreed.
Just want to thank Izada for a $10 super chat. I'm a commuter on RP's Rocket Profits train, he says. And we'll take one final question on Sanchez from James Wilson. Elon talked of moving the rocket garden over by the highway. Any idea where?
Well, wherever it is, it won't happen until that tower is completed, because there's not really room for it right now. There's too much construction going on down here, or I guess I should say assembly work more than construction going on along this bottom wall. So, obviously you have your tower sections, and then they're building all of the installation stands for the Star Factory. So I would say until like all of this work down here is completed, we probably shouldn't be expecting the rocket garden to move yet. But honestly, it could be anywhere within this entire area down here.
Honestly, I kind of wondered if they would do away with the inventory tent now that they'll have the factory building. They may just bring parts directly into portions of the factory, and then this whole corner here could potentially be a rocket garden where it's kind of closer to the highway for people to see. Plus, it doesn't really obstruct, any of the construction going off elsewhere.
That is a good point. And, speaking about that, this right here, if this is used for like pressurizing vehicles, it would explain why it's this actually a larger system down here than what's at the what's used in the Rocket Garden, because the Rocket Garden can hold 3 boosters and 3 ships. And hold on, let me go to another image of that. This seems to be enough for 3 boosters and 3 ships, but what's down in that other area is much larger. So, this system right here, well, not much larger, but if this is also nitrogen, then this is significantly larger than what's over there. So this could feed both High Bay, Mega Bay 2, and potentially a Rocket Garden down in this area if it ends up being down here later. And I agree, Ryan, like most of this stuff, I guess the question is whether or not the items that are in this inventory tent mostly go inside of the mega bays during stacking operations, or if these are actually items, mostly items that go into the Star Factory. If it's going into the Star Factory, then it makes sense that all of this stuff would probably be better off stored inside of the Star Factory, as you were saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of like internal components, located on the shelves kind of outside there. So I wouldn't be surprised if this yard at least goes away once the factory's kind of up and going.
Yeah, are a lot of these items still for the Block 1 or Version 1 of the ships and boosters as well?
I would say
I
pretty much
mean,
all of them are.
yeah, you can see pieces. I mean, they even have pieces of the water-cooled panels up there on the top, which is kind of interesting. There's plates there that they could be using if need be. But yeah, there's a lot of internal components and things kind of located all over these shelves if you know what you're looking for.
Cool. Well, shall we move over to the build site? Do we have any more Sanchez questions, Astro Joe?
Well, there's always the inevitable question. Jeff S. Jones asks, does SpaceX own the green square of land next to the inventory tent?
We actually haven't been asked that in a while. But no, there is a for sale sign out here. And as far as I know, they are willing to sell to anybody except to SpaceX. So they don't yet own this land right here.
That's all I got.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move over to the build site then. We're going to kind of touch on some subjects that we briefly mentioned earlier. But right now they're still working on ship 30 inside of here, where they stripped all of the tiles. Obviously, you can't really see it from this angle. And I don't think I really have an angle this week where you can see that work. I do not. But other than that, it is mostly empty in here. I think ship 31 is in there too. They're fixing the raceway that was damaged during the testing incident that occurred about a month and a half ago, I want to say. But other than that, there hasn't been tons of movement in and out of here. They are stacking booster 14 still. And the other big thing going on down here right now, which is kind of affecting the placement of vehicles, is the concrete replacement that's going on here. So they did dig all of this out right here. You can kind of see that they've started to lay new concrete. They added additional drainage. There you can see a large drain right here. And you can get an idea of how thick this concrete is now based on like the shadow right here. So they've replaced all of this concrete. They still got some more to do down here. I think like you can kind of see the line right here of what has and hasn't been replaced. So they're slowly moving their way down to this area. And I think that's kind of been limiting things moving around at the build site, specifically, well, the ship 29 and ship 30. So partially you have some construction going on inside of Mega Bay 2, which is also preventing movement. So I think that a lot of the tile work that they're currently doing would actually want to be done inside of this building. But right now they've got a lot of work going on in here. So they're installing walkway platforms around the entire perimeter of the of Mega Bay 2, it looks like. And then you can kind of see some of them right here. So they go into the corners. They go all across the back wall. I wish I had some ground shots that would kind of show this a little bit better. But yeah, because of all this construction, you have ships basically stuck inside the high bay, and all of that work that I believe would preferably be happening in Mega Bay 2 is currently happening here. They may possibly be done with Ship 31 repairs, as was mentioned when we were talking about the Sanchez site. So maybe we'll see Ship 31 move out this week and head back to the Massie's test site for cryo testing.
Yeah, we actually have a closure for tonight at midnight and tomorrow for Massie's.
Okay, so we'll probably see Ship 31 roll out here soon then.
Yeah, it looks like they've been setting that up.
Okay.
Maybe just a minor note, since we're kind of looking at the photo, we don't want to spend too much time on it, but they are painting the parking garage kind of this black color. So gonna probably be going with more of a black tone for a lot of the future the buildings here at Starbase.
Yeah, and this kind of matches what's on the high bay in Mega Bays. It's a little bit darker though, right?
Yeah, it matches the factory, but yeah, it's a little darker than what they've got on the bays.
Yeah, they're still got some construction work going on with this. Looks like they've added a roof onto the elevator columns. Actually, not sure if there are elevators in here, or if it's just stairs, but I'm assuming you have no choice other than to have elevators for handicap purposes. But yeah, still got a lot of work going on inside of here. You can see lots of construction equipment if you look through the side of this too. So probably a few more weeks before this actually comes online. Paint some parking spots as well too, and then we'll probably know that they're getting closer to actually opening up this parking garage structure.
Yeah, I think the projected completion date is sometime in August.
Okay. Moving on to the backside of this, still got more steel like structural steel down here, which is still being installed inside of Mega Bay 2. But the pile of steel down here is kind of decreased dramatically. So they may actually be getting closer to the end of that. You can see that they also have some corrugated steel panels down here, which kind of just is an indication of the fact that the walkways around the inner perimeter of the Mega Bay are probably filled with concrete. So yeah, I would love to see what it looks like from the inside. I think we have a decent idea, but maybe some 3D representation might end up helping us out, since we didn't get any shots inside of there when Tim was doing his most recent tour of Starbase. And I was looking on the backside just to see if there was anything to mention down here, but there is not. So anything else that you guys maybe wanted to point out going on at the build site area or ring yard area? Oh, wow. Are these, yeah, we got some chines down here or aero covers for booster 14.
I've lost track of which ones have them and which ones don't. I
Yeah,
think.
that's why I said it with a question mark.
Yeah, I think even the last time we saw 12, it didn't have them. So maybe those are for 12, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I think those are for either 14 or could possibly even be for 15, since they're getting close to finishing the stack for the locks take.
Wait, isn't 14 the one that's being stacked?
14's completely stacked. They've already started stacking 15.
Okay, right. So you have 12, 13, 14, and 15 in there.
Yeah, I believe the only thing we were waiting for is the aft section for 15, but I might be incorrect on that. But the rest of the locks take has been stacked.
As of Tim's last tour, neither or none of the boosters on the stands had any of the covers on their chines or the strakes. So it could be for any one of those boosters, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to pull up that, but glad you checked on that already. Cool. Anything else?
Yeah, it looks like they're just finishing up getting the Star Factory ready to start ramping up.
Yeah, and we do know that there are, portions of the Star Factory which have no equipment inside of them yet, and I think that's basically this entire area right here. So the parts that are completed are basically this L right here, and wouldn't even say fully completed, but they're at least operational. Are these sections right here? So a good more than half of the actual Star Factory is not active right now, and probably this little corner down here as well too, since this is the newest section of the building. I think that Kathy Lutters did a talk this week, and I believe she said, I don't know if y'all remember the date that she gave for when this would fully come online.
I believe she just re-quoted what Elon said, which was about 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And, as most of y'all know, this building is not done expanding yet. So we can see down here still a little bit more progress on the foundations that are going on down here. So basically these sections right here were already finished, and now it looks like they've started adding basically foundations for additional columns down here. And as of now, it looks like they're starting to move down in this area, which is really weird. I would say it seems pretty clear now that this is actually going to somehow physically connect to this building, with zero space in between it. It's tough to say for sure, but that's kind of how it's looking. But now they're moving down in this area and kind of surrounding the area that they still do not have permission to build on yet. And as far as we know, the next court date for the case related to this situation is, I think Jake said early August. So
Yeah.
still waiting on that, but it looks like they're building literally all the way around it. I just can't imagine like why would you hold on to this? You know what I mean?
Money is a powerful driver these days.
Yeah, I suppose so. Not getting what you're looking for as far as to purchase that land from them, but yeah, wild that they're just building right around it right now. But this is going to be a weird structure overall, given how it's expanding out. It almost looks like they're intending to increase the length of it in this direction too, like all the way down here possibly.
I think it'll
Yeah,
just be
very
flush with that wall there, that furthest extension. They might drive that. Well, I guess down here, the completed part. They may draw that line upwards until it kind of meets with that additional bump out. Because I think, based on the roof line, I believe that last large footing lines up with the extension there. So I'm wondering if that will become kind of a small protrusion, and then they'll just kind of box off the area where the land currently is at.
How does that work? I feel like you can't build a wall. Like if this extends to this wall, like you wouldn't be able to do that without coming into this zone.
Well, they'd have to get the land first, but the perspective of the wall ends up with it kind of coming down. So that footing would be in line with that wall right there.
Right.
And it's also interesting that footing looks like it lines up. If you go back to where the new ring yardish thing is, it actually lines up with the line on the ground, the double line. I guess that's supposed to be a walkway. The backside of the factory.
I don't have a shot that's like looking at it from behind right now.
Oh no, he just means from this angle. If you go down to the bottom left.
You're saying it lines up with what?
You see where those two white pickups are parked? Right in the middle there?
Ups.
Yeah, right
Basically,
there.
the road piece, there's on the left side of it, there's some cross hatching in the paint, and how that line goes up, it would intersect with the footing up above, kind of that parallel line there.
Right, I see him.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, moving on. We also still have more levels of concrete being poured inside of this building. It looks like they've got 2 levels, possibly the third down here, but I can't tell. It doesn't look like they've gone all the way. Oh yeah, they have. So it looks like they've completed the floor in most of the building, other than that last level up here, and then obviously working on the roof as well too. And I think we may see an actual like balcony area on top, or not a balcony, but a porch area on top of this, which is something we've talked about before. It doesn't look like a normal roof structure, and it looks like they'll actually end up pouring concrete on top of this.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll be like a launch viewing area later on.
Yeah, there's 2 cutouts right here and right here, which could either be for HVAC or stairs to come up to the top of this, but it's kind of tough to say. Um, I'm actually kind of leaning towards HVAC now. And we still got this extension piece being worked on down here as well too. Also moving super slow in comparison with the rest of the building. It doesn't really seem to be that high of a priority. Other than that, I don't think we have too much else to cover for the Star Factory. And I know for a fact that we have nothing to cover in the village. So let's go ahead and take some questions, and then we will probably move over to the launch site.
All right. I want to thank Andy Alder for a £2 super chat towards buying the vacant lot. Nice. Tommy Monroe sent a $20 super sticker as well as a $20 super chat fuel for the Aerobat. Thanks for the support. Keeping RGV flying. That Kevin has a question. Are those white pipes near the big Star Factory door near the high bay going to be set in concrete? Looks like it'll be hard to roll stuff out without tripping over those pipes.
Not seeing which ones you're
I
talking
believe
about.
they're referring to the trailers, the high pressure gas trailers, possibly.
Yeah, if that's the case, then these are mobile, so they'll just move them out. But I'm pretty sure you can probably maneuver the SPMTs and the ship in and out of here without touching most of that.
Right, got you. Now I see what they're talking about. Tony Ugg has a question. Will they replace Ship 31 tiles before or after cryo test, if they do at all?
Probably wait till the next flight test, if I had to guess, to see if the data is good. I mean, they might start taking some of the tiles off and kind of getting the base layer of the Pyron on there. But they may wait to really start replacing the shield until they get data from the next flight.
Yeah, especially since we're expecting Ship 31 to roll either tonight or tomorrow for its next round of cryo testing. So it's probably going to be a ways off before they start touching the heat shield.
Cool.
Right.
Any other questions for the build side area?
That's it. My queue is clear.
Awesome. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and move over to the launch site where we have a pretty good amount of stuff to talk about this week. I think we'll start down in this area near the actual orbital pad A, where, as y'all can see, booster 14.1 test tank was lifted off of the launch mount. It was 2 days ago. And now it's preparing to be transported away, I think. I don't know if they're actually maybe about to set it somewhere else. It hasn't moved from the launch site, right?
Yeah, it's actually sitting next to Ship 26 in the rocket garden.
Okay. Well, in that case, it has left the building. A little bit behind on things. I actually just got back from training that I was doing in Houston yesterday, so getting caught up on things still. So they did that test with 14.1, which was rather interesting. Do have some good footage that I would like to show from Lab Padre. Make sure y'all give Lab Padre an awesome thumbs up. Actually, we're going to start off with this footage from SpaceX, which is awesome, but also was slightly disappointed in because they didn't show some of the other details here. But as y'all can see, they did mainly perform this test using just one arm of the chopsticks with the landing rail extended. That is easily my favorite shot right there because it really shows you kind of the deflection of the chopsticks as it bumps into the tank. So this was only part of the test. They did that several times, actually just, slapping the side of the tank. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But we also have this footage from Lab Padre, which was posted by Vix, who I'm sure is maybe in the chat right now. I didn't see. But this kind of shows the other part of the test, which was not present in the SpaceX footage. Y'all can see the landing rail being deployed there, and I believe it moves upwards. Yeah, so it moves up to actually contact the load pin and then continues moving up to actually depress the landing rail. Interesting thing here is that they did not test both operations at once. So, performing the slap and then moving over or moving up to contact the load point. I think this may show something cool too right here. Yeah. So right here, you can also see some interesting movement on the actual load pin. So once the chopsticks lower back down, you can see it drop a little bit. So it looks like it's actually flexing when they contact it. So a lot to unpack here, and I know Ryan has lots of opinions on this. I guess Ryan, how much are you wanting to share? I know you're working on some other stuff right now with some animations and whatnot, but as far as what we're actually seeing with this test, I know there's a lot of opinions floating around. I have my own as well too. I think a lot of people maybe weren't expecting it to make contact like this. So I guess what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you worded it pretty well. A lot of people are pretty shocked with kind of what they saw. This is honestly pretty much what I figured I would see anyway. Without going into too many details, I think what we're seeing is exactly how SpaceX plans to catch a booster, and not. I didn't say attempt. I said catch. So keyword there. I think it's pretty important. But yeah, it's. I was really surprised that SpaceX actually showed us video. I think. We were kind of expecting video of the Massie static fire stand, but yeah, they gave us this gem instead, which pretty cool to see. We don't get a lot of videos of testing that don't involve static fires, so it's pretty neat to see this.
Yeah, I think they really want people to know that they're preparing for this. I think the interesting thing about this is obviously the fact that they only did it on one arm. So, well, there's a lot of interesting things to talk about here. You have a lot of movement with the left arm while this is happening, which is very interesting. But as far as the way that this is making contact, I think we probably would expect the same thing to happen on both sides. So, it may not be. I personally don't think there's any issue with how hard it's hitting this. I think some people would expect that while the booster is hovering, that if you hit it that hard on the side, you may cause it to actually like tilt over. But if both arms are doing the same thing, then there's really you can't really tilt it. So it would just stay in the middle like that. So this is actually the best way to guarantee that as the booster is still coming down, that you make sure that it's perfectly lined up with this and it's not going to miss. So I think that's been a thing that a lot of people have been wondering or not necessarily wondering, but worried about, is that it would just miss the catch altogether. And I don't necessarily see how that's possible. I don't think, unless they completely fall short of the chopsticks, as long as they're within this area, they're gonna catch it one way or another. So whether it's if it falls too quickly through here and these somehow don't manage to close in time by the time this load pin passes by, then it's gonna land on the grid fins. So even if this breaks free, it's still gonna land on the grid fins. So I personally think that there's no way it's going to pass through here. One way or another, they will catch it as long as it's within the reach of the arms. So, on that note, I do think that we'll probably maybe see 14.1 come back to the launch site at some point so that they can do combined testing with the other arm. We have not seen them extend the second or the other landing rail yet.
They actually have.
Really?
They
Did they
did.
do that?
Yeah. Yes, they did do that. After 14.1 was removed from the mount, they put the arms over into kind of the home position, and they raised them both, I believe, separately and then together at the same time. I believe once, maybe. So they actually have raised that other rail, so it does have that capability. I think it's a little. We're not sure if the other arm has the fully upgraded piston to move the arm or not, which could be why they only chose to do it with one arm. But regardless, it does seem like they were trying to characterize how the arm reacts when it impacts the side of the booster. Given, I believe they tested it more than 10 times, slapping 14.1. So I think the data that they got from this test can be applied to the other arm. So I think it's maybe 50-50 whether or not 14.1 comes back. If it does come back, it'll probably be after Booster 12 does its static fire.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Let me see if I'm going to go back. Vix does a really good job of posting pretty much everything. So maybe she has a good shot of them testing the other rail, but I don't think she does. Slacker. Nope, she does not. Okay. But yeah, so I will take your word for it. I haven't seen that, but that's awesome that they finally tested the other side. It's one more step that they needed to complete before being able to actually do this in real life. And I think this is going to be pretty awesome to actually finally see that for the first time. One thing that they haven't done yet, which I would like to have seen, I think I may know the reason they didn't, is to actually test out the push pins on the chopsticks. And maybe I do have some good footage of this that I can show as far as how it actually works. Somebody posted it in reply to one of my posts on X yesterday, which was actually Ryan's render of this. Oh yeah, wow. I don't need that. I can just open up Ryan's footage of this, or his animation. So just stand by for a second here.
Yeah, and maybe while you're opening that up, Zach, these you can actually see them. They're kind of the triangular-ish, sections that are kind of leaning off the ends of the rail on either side on the arms, and they actually have to be out of the way of the landing rails because they don't actually raise up themselves. It's only the landing rail that raises up. So those have to be moved out of the way, which is why basically the chopstick is longer than the actual landing rail. It has to provide a spot for those to roll out onto. So those open up, they get out of the way from the rail, it's able to lift up, and it's only when the rail is down are those actually able to be used to do anything. And they've used them, even though we technically don't see it all the time. They do use them pretty much every time they stack a vehicle. They do use them, so we know they at least work.
Well, what I would want to see, and this will Ryan's probably not liking this right now because this is a very, very old animation. So you could see it. Actually, maybe I passed it already.
Yep, you passed it.
Yeah, so this is the push pin right here. I'll let it play through. So you can see it moving the booster back right here. And the reason I want to see them do this is because if the booster does land this far forward and that push pin fails to move it backwards, then well, I guess you won't be able to set it back down on the launch mount. You could probably still put it on top of the transport stand, but I think it would be a little bit more difficult to line it up on that transport stand. The problem, though, with that, I don't think you can use the alignment pins. You can't, sorry, not the alignment pins, the stabilizer arms until it's back in this position. So if it landed towards the front and was not able to be moved back, then that would be a huge problem. So that's one system that I would like to see them test before they do this.
Yeah, that might be an indicator as to why they may not put it back on the launch mount. We'll have to wait and see what they're going to do. They're not going to do any testing like that with 14.1, I don't think, just due to the load point being a little floppy. So we might have to wait for a full booster to see if they're actually going to test anything like that. But I still don't think they're going to put, if they catch 12, I don't think they're going to put it back on the mount, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
another reason to not do this, and I'll let you say after Lawrence. Another reason not to do this is because there is no, as far as I know, there's no load point for the stabilizer pin to attach to on 14.1. So even if they did this, then all of a sudden they wouldn't be able to stop it from like swinging back and forth once it is brought to the position that it needs to be before that stabilizer arm would attach to it. So this might be something that you literally could not do with that, because then you wouldn't be able to set it back down on the launch mount.
Realistically speaking, they don't need the stabilizers either to put it back on a transport stand. They can line up the transport stand to the booster and not actually have to move it at all.
Yeah, with the booster transport stands, they have their own alignment pins on there, so they just need to get it as close as possible. But what I was going to actually
Those
mention
wouldn't work with
is,
this.
yeah, not with 14.1, but with the regular booster, it should. On the new sticks, there's only one of the pushers due to the links.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Anything else that y'all want to talk about with this? I feel
We
like there's
did
something
see,
else to mention.
yeah, I was just going to say, we did see them finally test the RQDs.
Yeah, they did a number. It was like 15 tests the other night with the RQDs blowing those out.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 15 or what, but I know we saw at least like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, we did have some good footage of that. I think Jeff may have posted that. Actually, let me search him really quick.
I can't remember either. Were they doing additional work with the SQD this past week? I thought Grover had the extensions put on.
This is all 12 of the tests.
Yeah, you can actually see in this shot, Grover has the extension put back on after lifting 14.1 off.
I like the way Jeff aligned these. Yeah, this is a good sign that they're getting one step closer to returning to actual booster static fire testing. And beyond that, I mean, they haven't really had to do much other maintenance on the launch mount other than replacing the actual hold down clamps. The actual hoses for the beak booster QD have not had to be replaced yet. And as far as I know, they haven't replaced any of the panels on top of the launch mount either. So that's a good sign. I mean, as you can tell, these are all still roasted. So they haven't replaced any of that yet. That's not to say they won't, but they haven't so far. So maybe mostly done with retrofit work. I know they did some stuff with the actual flame deflectors that are attached to the legs, because some of these were pretty warped. And obviously you can't really fix that. But I think that with the way the steel was warped on these, that there may have been cracking of the welds that attach it to the legs. And I think that was some of the work that they were doing, was repairing those welds. Starship Gazer has some pretty good footage of that, which I welcome y'all to check out his YouTube channel if you want to see some of that work that they were doing. Actually, I'm not sure if it was a members only video though. I'd have to double check that, but yeah, still check out his channel because he's got some great footage of things that have happened over the last few weeks. But yeah, I think that about ends our discussion of 14.1. One thing I also wanted to point out down here that looks like some interesting stuff happening here. At first, I thought they were clearing out the retention pond, but it actually looks like they're putting water into this retention pond. And I think they're draining the pipes for the deluge system here.
Yeah, I saw that earlier, and I was kind of wondering what was going on. The water that they're dumping it almost looks like it has like concrete dust in it because it's got like a grayish plume to it. So I'm wondering, I guess, what's going on with that. But yeah, it definitely looks like they are pumping water out of something.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, they could be pumping it out of the so this is kind of like a box down here, but it looks like they're connected to the actual ports on top of the pipes that are these are T's on top of the pipes down here. So I can't tell if they're like sucking water out of the little culvert box that they made down there, or if it's coming from the actual pipes. I feel like if it's coming from the pipes, that would probably be a problem. Whatever this sediment is being caused down there, I think it would only not be a problem if it's coming from the actual box down here. I mean, usually, as far as we know, what they use is treated water inside of the system, which we would have saw it look cloudy like this after the actual launch when you could see this was filled. But I mean, the only other thing I could think of is if you actually had a crack in this that was allowing concrete to fall in to the actual pipes. But I would like to believe that's not the case of what's happening here. Let's see what else. Yeah, let's move over to the tank farm.
Making
So,
lots of progress with the tank scrapping.
oh, it's lovely. I posted this morning that I'm actually kind of sad about this because I personally really loved the design of this tank farm, other than its placement. If it was further away from the actual launch pad, I think it would have been pretty much perfect. And by further away, I mean like literally across the highway. That would have probably been much better. But other than that, removing this, I think is kind of cool because, when you visit this area, you had to be like way on this side of the tank farm or over in the beach area to actually see the full stack, because these tanks are pretty tall. So
It's a very
now,
good point. It's very misleading looking at the aerial photos. If you've only ever seen, the RGV photos, when you're there in person, there was almost like a giant wall where you really couldn't see a whole lot in this area because these tanks are so tall and they look small in these photos, but they are not small. So yeah, this area being open is going to open up a whole lot of opportunities to be actually to see the full stack when it's on the orbital launch mount.
yeah, and by the time we're doing this live stream, this is already outdated because this tank has been fully chopped down and they lifted off the last one. I think it was either this morning or late last night. So now they are all removed. Moving to the other side of this, you can kind of see that they've started demolishing the foundation for the liquid nitrogen tank. That was the last liquid nitrogen tank, and they still have to do these three as well. So there's a little bit of a one tank shell partially remaining right here. They have completely gotten rid of the other ones, though. I don't know why they didn't cut this one all the way at the base.
We think there's still some active pipes right next to it, so they're using it for protection.
Yeah, they may lower the tractor down inside of it and jackhammer away the base using the steel to kind of corral the concrete chunks. and then lift them out of there before they remove that steel. But I'll have to kind of see if they do that or not.
Yeah, and I think that this kind of takes us back to something I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, which was the 2 additional tanks that have arrived to the Sanchez site. So, one thing I was expecting to kind of see here was additional equipment in the locations where all of this is currently sitting. So, I think all of these conduit racks will probably be demolished as well too. They're, partially already destroyed anyways. So once they take all this out, I think there's a few other pipes that are down in this area that they'll probably remove as well too. And then you have a big open space, and I think we may potentially see the tank from Sanchez, and I'll just remind y'all. Remind y'all of that one. These 2 tanks right here. So these are, as far as we know, LNG storage tanks. So they are just about the perfect size to fit inside of here. And I think we may potentially see those in this location. But the only thing is, I can't really think of why you would need to increase tank farm storage in this area. Why is this? Okay. Yeah. So I can't think of why you would need to increase any storage in this area other than what they've already done with liquid oxygen. And therefore, I do think those tanks are actually going to be going over to pad B, which we'll discuss in just a few minutes here. Actually, matter of fact, we can probably move over there right now unless you all had some other stuff you wanted to mention from this area.
Nope, I think go ahead
Yeah.
and move over there.
Cool.
Yeah, not much besides Scrapperama 2024 continuing.
Right. So there is this area down here which they've gotten this dewatering system set up at, and then we know that they've done some drilling of CFA pilings right here. So something is going to go in this area that they need to support with add some additional support for. So I think we may be seeing the base for potentially those tanks right in this area. I'm not going to lie. If that's the case, I'm not necessarily a fan of that because of the way that it overlaps the wall of the tower right here. It's not necessarily shielded from the plume when it reaches around the side of the building, but that may not matter depending on what happens over here with what we're expecting will be a flame trench. But yeah, so just before we get to that, one thing that I think is needed for this pad, right now we're assuming, I guess it's more than assumption because SpaceX has basically confirmed that they're going to be using the existing tank farm for this building. So they'll pretty much route those pipes from so basically liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, and methane to this tower. And the only thing that I think would need to have additional facilities over here would be for that detanking procedure. And so this is something that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was that I'm lost here. These 2 temporary storage tanks, this heat exchanger, and this condenser right here, I don't think you want to detank all the way back to this site just to be able to condition it for going back in the storage tanks. So I think you would probably want your detank system set up near the tower so it has a shorter path. It's not like performing a whole 2 separate loops all the way back over there. So I think we may end up seeing those 2 tanks in this area for that system. It would be arguably a little bit early for them to install those, honestly, because I imagine there's going to be a lot of other work going on in here. But on that note, the tower construction is well underway. Most of y'all will remember that they started pouring concrete in the actual tower the other day. And I think at first a lot of people were like, "Oh, I thought you said that was going to take multiple weeks." But yeah, it was actually only in the corners. And so kind of repeating what I was talking about last week, they do have all the scaffolding set up on the outside of this right here, and they need to weld all of these pieces for the walls together. So you can even see it right here. This line that goes down here is where these sections join with the actual corners. And so they need to weld all of those pieces together before they fill this with concrete. And with that scaffolding up here, that's essentially what they've been doing. So they've gotten concrete in the corners right now, which I don't know. What do y'all think? You think they will start stacking early, like they won't wait for the walls?
Yeah, maybe just to mention also, it appeared like they have prioritized welding on the interior of the wall for the reason so they could install the midway floor that would kind of separate this. Because I believe if you go down to the right, Zach, on this photo, you can actually see the floor. So this piece has been lifted in since this flyover was taken, and so they presumably they had to remove all of the scaffolding in order to put this piece down in there. So they probably prioritized all of the interior welding, and now they're going to be doing the exterior welding. And the fact that they put the concrete in the corners is probably a good indicator that they are going to at least stack one, maybe two sections before they fill those other walls with concrete.
Yeah.
Agreed. Plus, they've also installed the main cryo pipes in the tower base as well. So we're seeing a new design with that as well.
Yeah, I found that interesting. The I guess we can't say for certain with the one at KSC, but the original tower, or the first tower over to the left over there, the cryo tubes actually went on the outside of the structure, and they came up to the outside of the structure and went up the walls. But that is clearly not going to happen in this case. I guess if they were doing that here, it would have came up this wall right here. But it seems like the cryotubes are actually going to go inside of the base of this, which is very interesting, having them inside of the building like that. But they're also a little bit more protective. On the first tower, actually, we can kind of like see that. Maybe. Yeah, this is where they come up out of the ground right here. So they have this big shield that's covering them here, and then they also have shields on the side of the base of the tower, protecting them as they're entering the structure. So yeah, I guess they've started with putting those cryotubes in there, but fortunately we don't really know where in the structure they're at. But yeah, I mean, they're making quick progress with all of that, and there's a ton of welding involved in once they got all of that stuff in there as well too. You can see some more of the structural steel that's going on the inside of the tower base as well too. I think there'll be 2 levels of steel, so the tower is almost 3 levels thick, like 3 levels tall. You have a taller level down here, and then like a middle level right here, and I think you could put a 3rd level if you really wanted to. So I think we may see potentially 3 levels, if not just 2.
Yeah, plus we know the first, if you want to call it floor of the first tower segment, is a floor. It's already filled in. So they may add another layer on top there. But we've been seeing them this morning putting in more of the cross beams in after that H frame that they put in.
Right. Yeah, one other thing we got this week is some wall extensions that have been delivered. So these basically extend off of the ends of the wall right here. So you can see that these 2 sides are a little bit different than these 2 sides. So the concrete wall itself is, sorry, these are the brackets for where the diagonal cross beams attach at, and so it's actually like inside of the wall, whereas on these 2 sides it's on top of the wall. And so this wall actually is much thicker on this side, I believe, and it'll be extended out like this, kind of like 2 wings on either side, on these 2 sides. So that's what these 2 pieces are for down here. They have more of those that are coming because it's going to be like kind of tall as the rest of the walls. But yeah, they finally started delivering those sections as well.
Yeah, we saw the embeds go in for them when they did the whole pile cap. So we were expecting them. It was good to see them finally show up.
Yeah, after they get those walls up, I think we'll also see them build out the platforms for. Oh, and that makes sense now, actually. So you do have these longer beams right here. They could make up the actual two balconies, essentially, that will go on the corners like this.
Yeah, I believe Benedict measured that longer beam, and it would fit perfectly for creating the kind of the mid deck for that back balcony area.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, this is going to be a cool structure. It's nice to see the way that they're iterating on it. And I believe that this base is far stronger than the original one. With the additional steel supports inside of here, and a lot less likely to become damaged on the outer surface. The other one is shielded as well too, but with this, I think you could even, if you wanted to, attach another layer of shielding on top of the steel wall if you really wanted to. So that would make it so that those would be actually replaceable if they became damaged.
Yeah, this base seems to prioritize swift building as well as kind of optimizing on a lot of other things that they had to deal with on the first two towers.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would definitely say this is a learning experience after the first two. With we knew the first tower was pretty much the prototype. They tried to improve it with 39A, but I think this is after they finally started launching, they were able to figure out what they really needed.
Agreed. And really quickly, before we mention the rest of this part, I haven't done this yet in the show, but if y'all can do me a favor, I know there's like 1.6 thousand of y'all in here. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and give the stream a thumbs up if you're enjoying it so far. I would have to imagine you are, since you've made it all the way to the end. But yeah, I try not to mention that too many times during the show, but it is super helpful if y'all do that for us. So thank you for that. And with that, the thing that I'm most excited to talk about today is this area right here. And, we didn't want to mention it last week because Tim's part 2 of his Starbase tour had only just gone live. And so we didn't really want to, give out spoilers from that if anybody hadn't seen it yet. But one thing that was mentioned by Elon was that basically SpaceX is planning to transition away from the original design of the, I guess, blast surface of the launch mount. So we're no longer expecting just a plate underneath the launch mount, and instead we'll probably be seeing something that more resembles a flame trench. And so, we've kind of speculated on that, weeks, if not months ago, before he mentioned it. And, now it's nice to have some confirmation on that. And I think to some degree, things are kind of starting to take shape just a little bit. It's tough to truly predict what this is going to look like, but I don't know. How would y'all describe what we're seeing currently?
In my opinion, I think we're going to see something that is kind of a hybrid. Just from this outline, it's going to be kind of a hybrid of what we have at Massie's and what the 239 above ground flame trenches are at KSC.
Yeah, so maybe for the viewers to kind of make them aware of kind of the positioning of things, the orbital launch mount, or where the stack is going to sit, we've based on the geometry of the arms and how things kind of rotate and fit together, the mount basically has to be in line with the diagonal through the tower, plus or minus a few degrees in order to make things fit. So we know the mount is going to end up going about where Zach is circling. right there. So with the mount being right there, we can kind of see where the piles are and what they're doing, and where they've kind of excavated. And it is rather interesting that the mount kind of appears to be in the middle of this, rectangle that they've excavated. So not quite sure what that means quite yet, but it is interesting that we've seen them digging and installing the piles. We don't really know, how far below the surface they are. We don't see any rebar poking up or anything like that. So not quite sure how far down they're going to dig to expose the pile caps. But to me, it kind of looks like we're not going to be seeing an in-ground trench by any means. We're probably going to see something that is mostly above ground, is kind of where my opinion is right now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
that's
agree.
that's what I was getting at. Is it looks like they have dug down the piles several feet lower than the tower base pile cap, but not substantial.
Yeah, once they excavate all this, we'll be able to really kind of get a better idea. I mean, there are eh, things that kind of look like they're locations of the piles, but because I wouldn't expect the rebar to actually break the surface up here, since you have cranes going back and forth. This may not actually be what it looks like, but it almost does seem to be a pattern of them right here in this area. So they are rather densely placed, if that is the case. But we do know that there are uh, tons of rebar cages still out here. So they've been constructing these as they've been placing them in the ground. Right here is kind of where they assemble those rebar cages, and there's a lot of them. So it's tough to say how many there are, but sorry about that. Once they excavate this area, we'll have a much better idea. But one thing is for sure, this will be pretty deep when they excavate it. I would say, like, I don't know, at least 2 meters deep if I had to guess. Um, and I think you would need something like that if for a flame trench, the base of the flame trench specifically, um, similar to what we're seeing at Massey's, it would probably be lined with steel. But you want to make sure that uh, it's able to like withstand the downward force that's being applied on it, not only from the full stack, but as it's pushing down on the entire structure while the engines are lit. So it probably would end up having a rather thick base to support everything else above it. Um, but it's certainly going to be extremely interesting. Right now, I would say that with the way that it's extending, um, we don't know how far it extends right here. Whatever the groundwork looks like, we don't know how far it's extending, and we also don't know if it's going to end up continuing in this direction right here. So, I mean, it could be just a simple two-sided trench, or it may end up being four-sided potentially. Right now, you got some other things in the way of that, as far as the crane over here plus the scaffolding. Um, so it's tough to say like whether or not they're going to end up going in this area. I think if we see this crane move over to the side right here, which um, I would like to see, it does look like it's kind of made its home here for now, though. If we do see it move, that'll probably be so they can move over to this area with the pilings. But I would imagine that learning from past mistakes, um, they wouldn't do this in two pieces. Like, I think whatever foundation right here, they would want to make sure it's tied in to this side as well too. So I don't know. I imagine that if they are going to extend in this direction, we'll probably see this crane move soon. Um, if the crane wasn't there and they were going to dig down here, I imagine they would have two CFA drilling rigs so that they would be, multitasking over here. But there's certainly a lot of work that's still left to be done. You can just kind of tell by how many rebar cages are down here, and we don't know how many have gone in the ground. I think somebody may have a count of them. I know Vix has been kind of keeping track of certain things like that, so I'm not sure if she has a count or not. I didn't ask her before the show, But as soon as they excavate these, we'll get a really good idea of, how many are in this area, which by itself kind of tells you what to expect, I think.
Yeah, I think it might be too early to rule out the idea that they would go with another water-cooled steel plate here. From the simple standpoint that given, if the mount is where Zach's cursor is, there's roughly equal excavation going on, to the top left and to the bottom right, which would kind of imply that maybe there is a two-sided exit for the hot gases for this mount. And if that's the case, I'm not exactly sure how you would create a deflector without a point or at least an edge, which would see a lot of heating and potentially melt. So if there is a multi-sided design, my opinion is that they may actually go back to something like the water-cooled steel plate, and it would basically just have walls on two sides, and the other two sides just become the exit. Um, but I think it's a little too early to tell if that's what they're going to do, or if they're going to go with maybe a one-sided. It's just kind of perplexing why they're doing piles clear off to the left, unless that's just kind of support for the surrounding area. So we definitely have a lot of mysteries here that we'll probably be solving over the next couple weeks.
Agreed.
Yeah, and kind of extending on everything else that's going on in this area, we kind of predicted that they would delete this ramp over here for pad A, and it looks like that is now gone. So all of the elevated surfaces have been deleted. See all the broken up concrete down here, and they're slowly getting rid of all of that stuff over in this area. So tons of progress on the actual groundwork. I'm really interested to see what they end up doing in this area. I think that'll tell us a lot as well too.
Yeah, I still have an idea we may see an additional set of subcoolers show up for this side, especially if those two tanks end up over here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the whole pad A area is going to become a subcooler farm. Potentially any detanking systems that they need, and then we'll end up with some in-ground pipes eventually that'll just kind of tie into the other tank farm. So we know that SpaceX is going to be sharing the tanks at least. So there's essentially going to be a common manifold that at the exit of the tanks that either allows the propellant to go to pad A or pad B. So essentially they're going to be duplicating anything after the outlet of the tanks. So that would presumably mean subcoolers, pumps, any detanking equipment, basically everything that we see on the left and right of the original tank farm. We're probably going to see a duplicate of for pad B. They're just going to keep the same tanks. Think of it like a gas station. There's one. Well, there are multiple tanks in the ground at a gas station, but there's multiple pumps that you then pump into your car.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the only way around that, if they don't do something like that, which is something I mentioned on previous episodes, would be to pump it. Like you could still use these same pumps, but then just use the pipes that are running along the backside of this wall, and then send it all the way over to there from here, which wouldn't necessarily be that unreasonable. At the KSC launch site, the at least methane pumps are super far away from the launch mount. So it's not unreasonable to pump it that far away. I don't think it's ideal, not as efficient, but it's not impossible. So
Agreed. Plus, they've also have all that new plumbing for the horizontal tanks have flanges on the end, so there's a way they can go from those as well.
Right, yeah, and just to kind of point that out here, well, I think this will probably get extended yet again, but yeah, you could easily just extend off the end of these and send it to pad B. That works, I think, for the liquid nitrogen and liquid oxygen, but I'm not sure for the methane because it kind of stops here. They would probably have to go up and over all of the LOX stuff right here in order to do that, but it's not impossible. Cool. And I think we've kind of covered pretty much everything we wanted to touch on today, but I'm sure we are most definitely going to have some questions on this, on everything related to the launch site. So, Astro Joe, what do we got?
All right. We get a lot of support, I want to thank, but I am having to pick and choose some good questions. We are running over time, and our awesome producer, Emlyn, is going to be needing to catch an early flight tomorrow. So we want to kind of trim this down as quick as we can. I know you said at the beginning of the show we were probably not going to go the entire length of the show, but we are now over
Clearly
time.
lied.
Yeah, it's all right. But I want to thank JK Video for a $10 super chat. Thanks for your support. We also have a PayPal donation from Julian Richards. Thank you for the photos, a bit towards fuel. Thank you for that. We got Callistia Lee for a $20 super chat, donating to the fuel fund and or the fund to buy the vacant lot. Your choice. Thanks for that, Callistia. And Tommy Monroe, $20 super chat. That is a cool clip of the OLM. I think that was the 15 tests of the RQD. And let's see, Tommy Monroe with another $10 super chat to replenish the Keurig K-Cups. And we have a $4.99 super chat from Joe Tegmeyer. I haven't heard anyone address this. For HLS, they will likely need to test landing with legs. Any indications on a landing pad build that could happen?
That's probably still a little ways out. As quickly as SpaceX moves, I imagine that if they want to start testing the landing legs, that that would probably be a pretty short project that they'd put together, potentially at Massey's.
That'll be sketchy. I mean,
Well, it'd be like the Falcon 9. They've got the landing leg test jig at McGregor that they've used. That it basically is just a tall truss structure that they flop the leg down and test that it's going to deploy in various scenarios. And I imagine we would see maybe something like that. I mean, who knows? They might even do that at McGregor. They may not even do that at Starbase.
Yeah, they also might do it at Kennedy, since it is a NASA project.
cool. Any other questions?
Definitely. That Kevin asks, have we seen the right arm from the tower's perspective rotate at that increased speed like we saw with the left arm slap test? Thanks for all you do and taking our questions.
I don't think we have, which is why we're maybe wondering if it hasn't been fully upgraded quite yet.
Yeah, exactly. They only replaced the one actuator just on this arm, and they haven't done it on this. So the other arm is not necessarily capable of moving at the same speed.
Right, yeah, and all the extra hosing and accumulators and such, right?
For the most part,
Um,
the pistons the piston itself seems to be the same. It's mostly the hardware attached to the piston that allows the valving to go into specific ports. That was what was different on the other piston from at least what I've seen. So it's possible that some of that hardware could be swapped in place. They may have only done it on the one arm to make sure that everything would work fine. So we'll have to kind of see. I haven't seen clear enough pictures of the other piston to see if it actually has some differences on it or not yet.
All right. Question from Crane Man. How is the SQD doing? Did they assemble the fixed jib on the GMK 7550 for work on the SQD again?
That's what it really looks like. That is one of their next projects to finish fixing that.
I don't know if that crane is able to reach high enough for that. In the past, they've always used the LR 11,000, and I think with the once it finishes up at the tank farm, they're moving extremely fast. I imagine that would move over here to do whatever work needs to be done up here.
Pretty sure
Well,
they
they
used
act-
it. Yeah, they've already used it to pick it up to take the pivot points off of the front pistons.
Okay, cool. Stand corrected.
Hey, all right. Spacey Plum, is it possible the new OLM will be lower to the ground to accommodate future taller versions of ship and booster?
I sure hope not. It's already extremely low. 16 meters is not that high, so it's almost scary how low it is to the ground. I don't think you would want to go any lower than it is already. But it's not impossible.
There's a lot of conversations related to the height of the tower and future vehicle support and all of that we could go into, but we really don't know anything until we actually know the height of the mount and where it actually touches the bottom of the booster, where that positioning is going to be, because there's a bunch of constraint relationships based on that, which is where pretty much everything else matters. So until we have at least one point to go off of, we really don't know anything in relation to that.
All right, sounds good. Final question from Torsten Gaddick. How far along are they with the new entrance?
We don't know that there will be a new entrance. But as far as what we're able to see down here, sorry, let me get to a better image. Yeah, they haven't really done anything related to any entrances down here, so they still have this partial wall right here. I think they just don't want to take down the SpaceX sign. Oops. But down in this area where they cut this storage building in half, they kind of got rid of the wall that was right here. I think there's just fences up down there, but we don't know that it's actually going to be an entrance.
We won't know anything until they start removing the rest of the concrete for the ramp and adjusting the grade of everything, because even though they started taking out part of the ramp here on the left, the right side actually still has a slope to it as well. And the
Right.
ground then off to the left is still higher than it is on the right. So there's a lot of different grade changes here. So if they do build a new entrance, whether it be where the fencing currently is, we'll get a better idea once they start removing concrete.
Yeah, I think they're trying to avoid as much towards the entrance right now because of a possible Flight 5 coming up soon.
Yeah, they won't be taking apart that kind of bottom part of the ramp, just because then they'll have no way to get anything over to the launch mount.
All right, my cue is clear.
Awesome. Well, thank you to everybody for sticking with us through this episode. Hopefully we covered lots of interesting stuff. I mean, as always, there's a lot of speculation that goes into this because, we don't really get tons of information directly from SpaceX other than, the simple things that we touched on here. So a lot of it we kind of just have to put together ourselves. And, there's a good possibility that things may turn out differently than as we've predicted here. But it's getting really exciting. It's, going to be a long few months watching all of this stuff. And I'm excited for, to see this tower rise over the next 2 months. And, on that subject, I want to repeat that, completing the tower by the end of August does not mean that it will become operational by the end of August. Got a lot of work to do on this, and it's going to be exciting to continue to watch it over the next few weeks. Again, I guess I'll repeat one more time. If y'all haven't already, do us a favor and hit that like button. Really appreciate all of you every week. Everybody who's donated to help out with the cost of the flyovers, and as well as just helping out to with staff and all that stuff. Really appreciate the donations for that purpose. Also want to remind all of you who were gifted memberships today that if you have not already, you can access all of the flyover images from this week. So go ahead and check those out. You can kind of scroll through them on your own and zoom in on things that you may have wanted us to look at closer. You can go ahead and do that yourself as well too. And yeah, appreciate all of you again. And also want to give a huge shout out to the mods and to Ryan Hansen Space and Lawrence for helping out with commentary today, and also Astro Joe for taking on the questions and donations. And with that, I will pass it off to either Ryan or Lawrence.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been another great episode, another great week of flyover images. So as the weeks progress, we're going to get a lot of interesting photos. It's really an exciting time down at Starbase as another tower is going to be rising up. So in the coming weeks, there's going to be lots of stuff. So yeah, make sure that you subscribe here. RGV will continue doing these flyovers, and we'll have lots of content to go over.
Thank you, Zach and Ryan and Joe and the whole RGV team. Thank you to all our YouTube members and Patreon members for the support, and look forward to seeing the next flyover.
Agree with all of that sentiment. I won't repeat everybody, but thanks, Emlyn, for hanging out. We know we need to get you on the move. So thanks, Jeff S. Jones, for a last-minute $10 super chat, RGV gas fund, and vacant lot donation to SpaceX. LOL. So thanks for that. Thanks, everybody. Thank you to my lovely wife, Astro Jen, for scheduling these shows, rounding up everybody to get commentators all lined up at the same time. And with that, great show, everyone. Appreciate Irma getting these shots. Most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love you. Bye.